Well, thank you, Miss Ayel.
Anything
That was
for
beautiful.
the
Did you say anything for the Lord?
Lord? Yeah, bro.
Oh, good. Yeah. I thought he said anything for me, and I was like, no, that's not real. That was a twofold hug. One, because he loves me, and two, because he's leaving. He has a infant baby that is at home right now that was up all night long. So he has a sleep-deprived wife and seems like might be a sick infant girl. Give our love. We love you. Thank you.
Love you guys.
Just never know what's going to happen on a Sunday morning here. It's always exciting. You probably do know that we are in the Gospel of John. That's one thing that you can, count as being pretty reliable for the coming weeks and months and even years. And we come to a really fun and interesting passage today in John chapter 6, if you want to turn in your Bibles there. And it's a text which I assume that most of you are quite familiar with. It is the story of the miraculous feeding of the 5,000. And when I say that, I think that pretty much everybody, if I were to ask you, what happened there, the feeding of the 5,000, almost everybody would be able to tell me, oh yeah, Jesus was out teaching and a large crowd came and they didn't know where they were going to get food for all these people. And then they asked for food, and just one little boy had a lunch packed with 5 loaves and 2 fish, and he brought it up to Jesus, and Jesus multiplied, and he fed everybody, and that's the story, right? Like, everybody knows it. We teach it to the kids in Sunday school. It's probably one of the first miracles of Jesus that you've heard. It is actually, interestingly, the only miracle of Jesus that appears in all 4 of the Gospels. So it is probably, because of its scope, because of the fact that it affected so many people, it made it into each one of the gospel presentations. So it is the only miracle that appears in all of those gospels, and it is unique in a lot of ways. And as I was kind of thinking and praying about it this week and thinking, how do I share this in such a way that is maybe not the same sort of thing that we've all heard so many times, and with that not even really being my intention, but just kind of wondering what else is there, I feel like the Lord kind of put something on my heart to share, and that has to do with partnership with God. And I've been thinking and having conversations lately, and even just a brief one this morning, about what it takes to kind of keep a church going and operating. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot. Every week in, week out, day out, there are lots of things that need to come together just for like a Sunday morning service in order for the service to kind of go off without a hitch and not have anybody notice anything and just have it just like seamlessly go through. It takes 10, 15, 20 people just to make this go, doing their own little parts. And then, of course, with the different programs and things like that. And as the Lord continues to bring folks, we will continue to be able to do more and more and do it more smoothly. But nothing really in life can you do very well by yourself. God made us in such a way that we need fellowship, that we need community, that we need partnership. And it is actually an expression of who he is, because God is triune. And in the idea that God is one, he is also 3. That there is fellowship and there is partnership and there is camaraderie within the Godhead. And as we are all extensions of our Creator, as we are all expressions of the one who made us, that is something that is innate in every single one of us too, that we need partnership in our lives. I think the greatest single example of this is the marriage relationship that God established when he made the first 2 people. And the first thing that he said to Adam after he made the first man was, "It is not good for man to be alone. And man plays all kinds of duty there. Triple duty, really. It is the word that we translate in English as Adam, which means man, which also stands in for mankind. So it is actually the name of the man. It is a description of his gender, and then it also is the word for all of humanity. So he's saying it is not good for this particular gentleman, Adam, who is a male and is the sum total of all of humankind right now. It is not good for him in any of those terms to be alone. He needs a partner. He needs someone to come alongside of him and to work with him and to partner with him in what he's doing. And this is something that God, from the very beginning, has written into the fabric of humanity. And it is something that he, as our loving creator and father, desires that we would come into partnership with him as well. And that was the task that he gave Adam and Eve in the garden. The very first task was he told them to govern, to rule over the earth alongside of him. That the authority they were ruling with was actually his authority. They were co-heirs to the kingdom of God, which was being made manifest right there in the earth, in the Garden of Eden. And he asked them to partner with me in taking care of this place that I have made. And that was the design. Of course, that kind of went haywire when they decided they didn't want to partner with God's plan, but instead they had their own plan. And then very interestingly, and this is all actually strangely going to come back around at the end, God said, here's my plan. Let's do this plan. Adam and Eve said, no, we have another plan. We're going to do it this way. And the result of that was that their fellowship and that partnership with God was removed because God had to withdraw from the place that he was at, a fellowship with them in the garden. But the entire story of the Bible, from start to finish, is about the redemptive work of God. Amen. And the story doesn't end there. It doesn't end with the mistake that they made and with God saying, this relationship is now severed. It is now fractured. The whole story of the Bible is God repairing and redeeming and restoring that severed and fractured relationship in order to bring us back into perfect union with him. And that is what we are all looking forward to, that sweet someday that he cracks the sky wide open and comes back down in splendor and glory and takes us all to be with him forever, that relationship will be restored, that paradise, Eden, it will be put back together here on earth, and we will be able to experience it and enjoy it just as he had planned all along. So, there is something inside of us that we need, and I think sometimes even really appreciate and desire partnership. There are lots of things in my life that sometimes I feel like this would just be easier if I just do it. Do you ever feel that way? Do you have it? Why did I see two wives just look at their husbands? I don't know if that was a reference to the husband or the wife. I feel that way a lot. It would just be easier. I'll do it. Or, when you're trying to do something and then somebody wants it done one way, you want it done another way. I am not speaking about my marriage right now. That's not what's happening. And you think, if you want it done that way, you can just do it. Or I can do it and I can just do it this way. It's a lot easier. But easier is not always best. And there's this incredible amount of growth that happens when you have to start to work alongside of somebody else, when you have to understand how to make these compromises, when you have to figure out, okay, I am not an island. I don't get to do this life all on my own. I don't get to do this by myself. How do I partner with, how do I come alongside somebody else and work cohesively and in a way that's going to bring about the most fruit? And of course, we see this all of the time too here at the church. The more things we do, the more things we get involved in, the more projects we have and outreaches and those sorts of things, the more that you kind of start working alongside of people. And it's like, I don't know, who put you in charge of this thing? Why are you making the calls here? And you have to start to learn to die to yourself and to give your will and your desires over to the Lord. And really interesting, one of my favorite quotes that I don't have here because I didn't put it in my notes, but I can't even remember who it was. I'll attribute it to C.S. Lewis because all the good quotes are his. But he's talking about unity. And he says if you want unity within a church or within any group, the thing that you do is you don't look to the other person in order to be unified with them, because that's just going to cause all kinds of problems and it's going to bring all kinds of friction. He said that each one should look to God. And in our looking to God and in our trying to be conformed to God, we are conformed to one another by proxy. That as we are conformed to God, we are conformed to one another. And as we surrender our wills to God's will, then our wills start to come in line with one another, and we can partner with each other as we are partnering with God, and we can do incredible and wonderful and great things. And in our text today, it's the story of the feeding of the 5,000, and we've been talking about the miracles of Jesus and what they mean, their significance, what they mean, what it is that essentially John is trying to tell us about Jesus. And we're not going to get to that point today because this is one miracle that Jesus actually has an entire discourse after the miracle where Jesus tells us what the miracle was about. So we're going to have probably 2 or 3 weeks. The whole chapter 6 of John, after this miracle takes place, is Jesus explaining to the people what the miracle meant. So I don't want to talk so much today about the meaning of this miracle, but I want to talk about the means of the miracle. So not what the miracle means, but the means of the miracle. How did it happen? And in John chapter 6, in verse 1, it says, sometime after this, and the this, if you remember, is just from chapter 5 when Jesus healed the lame man at the pool of Bethesda. He healed the lame man, and then after that, he gave him the command to pick up his mat and to walk. And then all of the religious leaders saw the man walking, and they came and started asking him, what's going on? You can't carry your mat on the Sabbath. And he said, but I've been paralyzed for 38 years, and I'm walking now, and you're concerned about me carrying my mat? And the people came, and they started questioning Jesus. They started asking him, who gives you the right to do this? And Jesus asserts his authority, the authority that is his, which he shares with the Father, has that long discussion with the religious leaders, and it ends kind of in an interesting way, which we're going to come back to. But that's the this that John is referring to. Sometime after that, Jesus crossed the far shore of the Sea of Galilee. That is the Sea of Tiberias. And you'll have, you maybe have never heard the Sea of Galilee called the Sea of Tiberias before. I did not bring a map, but we've seen it a bunch of times in Israel, and up in the northern section of Israel, you have the Sea of Galilee. The Jordan River comes out of that and goes all the way down to the Dead Sea that's down in the south of Israel, and that is the Sea of Galilee. It's really a lake, but any large body of water in the ancient world was referred to as a sea. That's really what we mean when we say sea. It's a large body of water, but it was the largest body of water they had in that area, so they called it a sea. The Sea of Galilee. Herod Antipas, the one who was Herod during Jesus' time, built a city on the shore of that sea, and he dedicated that to the Roman Emperor Tiberius, who ruled from 14 to 37 AD. The city was completed sometime towards the end of Tiberius' life, and that city is still there today. If you ever go to Israel, you take a boat tour of the Sea of Galilee, you're either going to leave from Tiberias or you're going to leave from Capernaum, and then you will end up in one of the other spots. So that's usually the trip, is from Tiberias to Capernaum. And it still stands there today, the ruins of the city. But over time, as the city became more and more popular and prevalent and people were coming through it, the sea took on the name of the city, and they started referring to it to the Sea of Tiberias instead of the Sea of Galilee. So that's why you have that discrepancy there, just in case you were wondering what's going on. But it is the very same Sea of Galilee. And they had crossed over, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. And then Jesus went up on the mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. And it is not an unimportant detail here that this miracle takes place in relation to the Jewish Passover, because the Jewish Passover for the Jews is going to remind them of the Passover, the first Passover, which reminds them of the Exodus, which reminds them of Moses, who was this messianic figure. Moses was this man who came and delivered the nation of Israel from their oppressors. And you remember, we're here now in the first century, and you have the nation of Israel again being oppressed by a foreign government. This time it's the Romans. So the nation of Israel is under oppression by the Romans. And every time Passover comes around, they're thinking to themselves, when does our new Moses come? When does the new deliverer come? Who is going to come and rescue us from this oppression just as God has done before? And very interestingly, Jesus is about to have an interaction with these people in the context of Passover, as they are all probably thinking about Moses. And the question is whether or not these people are ever going to believe. Chapter 5 ends with this really funny question from Jesus. He ends up giving this little speech, and if you just look right back to the end of chapter 5 there in verse 45, he says, "Do not think that I will accuse you before the Father. Your accuser is Moses, on whom your hopes are set." And what he's saying is Moses delivered the law, the Mosaic law. That is not where we derive our name from. Our name is from the art, not the law, but the Mosaic law. And he's saying that's your accuser. The thing that accuses you is the law. The law that you cannot keep is the thing that condemns you and tells you that you need a Savior. So you are already accused by Moses. Jesus is saying, I have not come to accuse you. You stand accused by the law. I've come to deliver you. And your hopes are set on a Moses, though, very ironically. All that Moses brings to you is accusation and condemnation, and yet you still have your hopes set on a system just like that. Jesus came to do something different. He says, if you believed Moses, then you would believe me, for he wrote about me. But since you do not believe what he wrote, how are you going to believe what I say? And that is kind of the question that John leaves hanging there in the air when he comes to this miracle. So essentially what John is saying of the people, that Jesus said of the people, is what is it going to take in order for you guys to believe? What will it take? Because up to this point, if you will remember, the masses of people are not putting their faith in Jesus after the signs he performs. That is John's expressed purpose in writing this gospel. These things are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you might have life in his name. He said, that's why I wrote this. But the irony of this whole thing is that all of the people who actually saw it, none of them are believing. They continue to reject. They continue not to believe, not to put their faith in him. And John talks about this straight at the beginning. In John 1:11, he says of Jesus, he came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. So John basically is saying, Jesus came here, he did all of this incredible stuff, and the people who were supposed to receive him didn't receive him. But I'm writing this so that maybe you might possibly be the ones who do believe. Because none of these people did. None of these people believed. They missed it over and over and over again. The people who should have understood, they missed it. And this is what Jesus is fighting against. So he says, what is it going to take in order for you to believe? You want somebody like Moses? And if you remember, and this is all going to come to bear in a couple weeks here, but one of the great miracles that took place under Moses' leadership was as the Jews, the multitude, was out in this desolate land, out in the desert, without any food, God miraculously provides bread. He provides miraculously manna for the people to eat. This miracle bread. And John is setting the scene right here. He's already drawing to our minds Moses. He's left him hanging in the previous verses. It's Passover time. We're thinking about Moses. And now we have a crowd of people out in the middle of nowhere, which John doesn't say, but in the three synoptics, they say they were out in a desolate region where there was nothing. There was no place to go to get food. There was nowhere for food to come. And these people are out there and they need to eat. So what's going to happen? Will we see something like we saw with Moses? You guys already know that that's what's about to happen. So when Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy food for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than a half a year's wage to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." And there's another interesting parallel going on here from the Samaria account. If you remember when Jesus spoke to the woman at the well in Samaria, been a month or so since we were there, he speaks to the woman at the well. She realizes who he is. She runs back into town to go tell everybody. At that time, the disciples are coming out, interestingly, with food. They're bringing food to Jesus. They had gone in to get food. They're bringing food. They offer him food. He said, I don't need that bread. He said, my bread is to do the will of the one who sent me. And he says that to the disciples. Very interestingly, now Jesus turns the question to one of the disciples, to Philip, and he says, where do we get bread, Philip? And you would think that Philip might remember what had just happened not too long ago and said, we don't need bread. Our bread is to do the will of the one who sent us. That would be like the really good answer, but that's not what Philip says. Philip says, I don't know. It seems kind of, looks impossible. I don't know how we will feed all these people. I don't know what we're going to do. But Jesus sees the people coming. And in the same way when he was in Samaria, the disciples come back to him. And he says, look, as the woman starts bringing all the people back out, look. He says that the fields are ready for harvest. All these people are coming to Jesus. And he says the fields are ready for harvest. In that story, Jesus had presented himself as the living water. Anyone who thirsts, come to me and drink. In this story, he has another multitude of people coming. John tells us he looks and sees the multitude of people coming, and now he is about to present himself as the bread of life. And anyone who hungers, they come to him and eat. And that really is what's going on here. But again, we'll have 3 weeks diving deeply into the full meaning and significance of that as we continue to go through the text. So Jesus is going to be the bread of life, and there's a whole crowd of people coming. And it really is a strange question that Jesus asks Philip here. And he asks him, where are we going to get bread to feed all these people? And then John puts in this little note, and he says he was just asking him to test him because he already knew what he was going to do. And then it's like, why would Jesus do that? Why would he? It's like he's trying to trick him. It's like he's trying to trick Philip. He says he already knew what he wanted to do. So then why does Jesus ask him, what should we do? And we're going to hang out here for probably a little bit longer than we should. But I think that there's something really, really interesting going on in this moment. It says that he was testing him. John specifically says that Jesus asked Philip this in order to test him. And the word test in Greek it's a really interesting word. It's parazo, and it actually is the same word for test and tempt. That anytime you see in the Bible someone was tempted, it's parazo. And anytime you see in the Bible someone was tested, it's parazo. And it says here, and if you were not a careful Bible translator, you might come to this and you might read it and it would say, Jesus said this in order to tempt Philip. That's interesting. So then there is this complexity to this word and this word study that you have to do in order to derive meaning. You can't derive meaning if we haven't talked about this in here before. Hear it now for the first time, but it is it is not appropriate when you hear people who are doing translation work and they will say of a, particularly when, only in the context of preaching and teaching the Bible, that's the only place that I have any kind of, authority to speak. But when people say that a word has a literal meaning, words don't have literal meanings. Words don't mean literally anything except for what the person using the word wants the word to mean, and the person who hears the word agrees that the word means. Words have a range of meaning, and I do this in my hermeneutics class. And Sabrina and Zach are here this morning. Good morning. I didn't have you guys for hermeneutics, but we talk about what a word means, and it's like if you take the word character. I think we did it here in our Bible study on Wednesday nights. Character. What does the word character literally mean? Well, it can mean like a person in a play. It can literally mean refer to someone's the quality of their moral condition, right? Their character. It can mean, if you're in the Twitterverse, a letter or number, one of 146 that you're allowed to use in order to make your tweet. It can be a term used to describe a person who has a very exuberant personality. That person is a real character. It can mean literally a bunch of things. So to ever say that a word literally means this is just, if you ever hear anybody say that, just say, that's not true. Words literally mean a bunch of different things, depending on who's saying them and on what they mean. And that is the point to be made here from this. The word actually seems to be referring to the trial that is basically being set in front of a person and has to do with the motivation of the person who is setting it there. So, when a person has the motivation that they present a trial before a person or a test, the implication is that their desire is that the person succeed and pass. When the person sets a trial in front of someone and they desire for the person to fail, then this is a temptation. They are drawing them towards failure. It is the same circumstance, though, which can be approached from different sides. It is almost like, if you want to think about the little angel and the little demon on the shoulders of the person in the cartoon, and you come up to a particular parazo, and this one over here is saying, do it, and this one's saying, don't do it, and this one's saying, you're going to fail, and this one's saying, you're going to succeed. And this is the point of tests. And anybody who's ever been a teacher knows that when you give a test to your students, your desire is not to trick them and to stump them and to make them fail. Your desire is for them to demonstrate to you what they know. And this is what John is saying Jesus was doing with Philip. He gave him the opportunity to demonstrate what he knew. He did not desire for Philip to fail. He did not desire for Philip to provide a wrong answer. Jesus was giving him an opportunity to demonstrate what he knew. When I was at the tail end of the PhD program, there's the last thing that you do before they clear you to write your dissertation is a thing called oral exams. And you have to sit down in a room by yourself with a suit on, very nervous, with 6 to 10 of all of the most brilliant men that you've ever met and personally known in your whole life. And you sit in that room, you're locked in there for 2 hours, and they just get to ask you whatever question they want to off the top of their head about whatever thing that they think that you should possibly know in all of the time that you have been studying. That is a test. And I was quite nervous, as you might imagine, going into that day. And I spoke with my advisor, my chairperson, Dr. Parker, one of the most incredible men that I know. And I said, what do I need to know, going in here? And he said, everything. You need to know everything. You should probably not forget anything. And I said, okay. And he said, we're not trying to fail you. We're giving you an opportunity to show us how much you know. We're not trying to stump you. We want you to tell us how much you know. And what was really, really crazy was I got in the room and I sat down and they started asking me questions. And I was like, I kind of know a lot of things at this point. I kind of have learned a lot. And it turned into this thing where they would say, oh, and tell me more about that. And tell me more about that. And yeah, I expound on that. And eventually they will bring you to the point where you can't answer a question because there's 10 of them and they're all smarter than you. And they will ask you some question you don't have any answer for. It eventually happens. But the purpose and what they were trying to do is they basically said, this is your opportunity to show us everything that you've learned. Don't think of it as us trying to keep you from your goal. We're just trying to verify that you are deserving of holding this degree. And that's exactly what Jesus is doing in this instance with Philip. He's saying, I'm not trying to trick you. This is not a trick question. I'm giving you the opportunity to shine here. I'm giving you the opportunity to be the one who demonstrates that they know the answer to this question. And it is Jesus' first step in partnering with his disciples in this task. The first step was, let's get some ideas. Let's get some ideas from people. Here's all these people coming. Where do you think we're going to get enough food for them? Philip. And Philip, unfortunately, seems to fail the test. He doesn't provide the right answer. He says, well, I don't know. There's a ton of people out there. And it would take half a year's wage. And that would just only buy enough food for everybody to have a single bite. I don't really know. And it seems that what happened with Philip was that he had lost his focus on Jesus. He wasn't thinking about the man that he had seen perform all of these miracles in the past, and instead he was looking at the problem. And he saw how big the problem was, but he didn't see how big Jesus was.
Amen.
And he got stuck looking at the problem, and he said, I don't think there's an answer to this question, as he's looking at the answer to the question. He's looking right at Jesus, and he's missing it. And when these trials and these tests come, they are opportunities for us to set our sights on God and to come into closer fellowship with him. It is not God trying to trick you. C.S. Lewis, I have shared this quote in here before, but I'm going to share it again. He talks about his conversion experience and his faith, and he says that God has not been trying an experiment on my faith or love in order to find out their quality. He knew it already. It was I who didn't. In this trial, he makes us occupy the dock, the witness box, and the bench all at once. He also knew that my temple was a house of cards. His only way of making me realize the fact was to knock it down. And essentially, in short, what C.S. Lewis is saying is that when God provides or allows for trials or tests in your life, God is not testing you in order that he might find out where your faith ends. Like my professors were doing when I was sitting down in oral exams, they wanted to find out how much do you know? What's the limit of all of the things that you can tell us? They were trying to find that out. God, on the other hand, already knows. He already knows when you're going to give up. He already knows when you're not going to have the right answer. He already knows when you're not going to care, when you're not going to look to him, when you're going to turn and go after the thing that you want instead of the thing that he's called you to. He already knows. He is, what C.S. Lewis is saying, allowing these things to happen in order that you might discover where your faith ends. In order that you might discover where your perseverance ends. In order that you might discover, this trial doesn't seem worth it. I don't know. This is a really hard fight. I don't know if is it going to pay off in the end? Is this something that I really want to do? You have to figure it out. And then he says, and you sit there in the courtroom occupying every seat. The witness stand, you're the jury, and you're the judge. Examining yourself in the midst of this trial, figuring out where is it, how far does my faith go? How far does my trust in the Lord go? And it is in these moments that if you look to yourself and if you look to your problems, you will find that it does not go very far at all. If you let your eyes focus on the multitude that needs to be fed, and if you let your eyes focus on the mountain that needs to be climbed, or the difficulty that needs to be overcome, instead of focusing your eyes on Jesus, then you're going to miss it every time. And it tells us this in Hebrews 4, that therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us firmly hold to what we profess. So keep the faith, for crying out loud. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but we have one who has been tempted, tested. We have one who has been tempted, is what most Bible translators go with in this instance, in every way that we are, yet was without sin. Let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. And this is what they are saying, that when you come to these tests, when you come to these trials, you look to Jesus, your high priest, the one who has passed every test already for you. It's like you get to copy off of his paper. It's like you're sitting in the exam room and the exam is being given, and God, your great and gracious Father, says, yeah, it's an open book exam. And I'll tell you what, Jesus is sitting right over there. He aces every test too. I'll just let you copy right off his paper. Just copy. Actually, you should. I'm telling you, just copy off of Jesus' test. He already did it. He has all the right answers. And that's what we should do. That's what we should be doing. Tests are opportunities for us to lean on Jesus. Tests are opportunities for us to look to him and say, I don't think that I have the strength for this. I don't think that I have the answers for this. This is a big problem, and I don't know what the solution is. And you look to Jesus, and he says, well, it's really good because I do. I've been tempted, I've been tested, I've gone through every single trial, and I came out on the other end with flying colors. And if you would like to know, I can show you. Not only that, I'll give you the strength to do it. He's already been through it. He's already conquered it. And when we find ourselves going through those difficult things, or when we find ourselves looking for answers, it is an opportunity for us to come into partnership with God. It's like the best opportunity. Because when you find yourself without the strength to get through, what else are you going to do? You have to lean on God. You have to depend on God for strength, for security, for provision. And this is the point. This is what Jesus was doing. He was giving Philip that opportunity. James says it like this before we move on too much further. In James 1 and starting in verse 2, he says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the test of your faith produces perseverance. And let perseverance finish its work so that it may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So, I know that it's hard. I know that it's easy to say and hard to do, but when the trials come, these are occasions for joy and for celebration. They are occasions for you to say, okay, God, I really, really need to be walking alongside of you in this. I really, really need to be partnering with you in this in order that I don't find myself off in some other horrible, horrible place making things worse. I don't know if you guys are the type, getting a little wiser as I get older, but a lot of times when you come to the end of yourself, do you ever just do stupid stuff?
Never.
No? And it just makes everything worse? And what's that? It just gets worse. It's just like this reaction, like I don't even know what to do anymore. Okay, well, I guess I'll just do this stupid thing, and then it just it just gets harder and harder and harder. Instead of saying I don't know what to do, and you look to Jesus and say, "Did you have this question on your test?" You did. I see that you actually did have this question on your test. What did you do? Oh, forgive. Oh. Grace, gosh, patience, rely on the Heavenly Father. Is there like a heaven ATM or something? I can just get some money out real quick, because that would be easier. You get the point, though. You understand what I'm saying. I just got lost in my own little test there for a second. There's greater and smaller tests, This one that Philip failed here, it was on the smaller side, but there are much bigger tests in life, and I have failed some big ones, church. I will let you know that.
So have I,
Everybody has.
Thank you.
and still do.
Appreciate that. The problem is, so often as we take our eyes off of the Lord and put them on the problem at hand, we should not expect that we're going to come out victorious in any situation. And that's the point. It seems that Philip had not been paying attention. This goes back to what John said to open his gospel. He came to his own, and even his own disciples, and somehow they missed it. Somehow they didn't understand. Somehow they continued to miss it over and over and over again. Philip missed his opportunity to be the hero in that situation. Jesus said, what are we going to do? Philip, I would have, if it was me and I had thought about it, I'd have said, you said we just live on doing the will of the Father, so we don't have to feed them anything. I say we just put them all to work and they'll just miraculously be filled. Something snarky like that probably to the Lord. But Philip, he missed it. And the thing is that if we're not paying attention, and if we don't have our eyes set on the Lord, and if we're not watching him and being in close fellowship with him, then when our test comes and when our opportunity comes and the Lord looks to us and says, what should we do in this situation, Chris? If I have not been paying attention, I'm going to give him some stupid answer like, I don't know. I don't know what we do, God. Boy, if only there was somebody who knew what to do, because it's sure not me. And look at me. Stay focused on me. Partner with me. Walk alongside of me. And when the time comes, you will know. You will know what to do. Philip missed it. But then another disciple, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, he spoke up and he said, here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. Okay, this is good. We might be onto something. Oh, no. But then he says, but how far will that go among so many? So if we were going to say that Andrew was being put to the test here, Andrew, he failed the test too. He said, here's a little bit of food, but it's not going to really do much. So he also doesn't seem to be getting the point. But Jesus is about to fix everything here. He said, have the people sit down. John lets us know that there was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there, and I'm sure that if you've heard this story in the past, many of you are well aware that they only counted the men usually in those days, and then they did the math from there. So if there were men there, Almost certainly there were women there too. And if there are men and women there, then that means that there's babies there, if you know what I mean. There were children there too. So you have at the very least double this number. At the very least, you had 10,000 people. And some scholars will go so far as to say that there may have even been 5 people for every one man, putting the number up to somewhere around 25,000 people. A very, very large crowd of people, and they had all gathered, and you can kind of start to understand as Jesus asked Philip, where do you think we're going to get food to feed all these people? And he says, I don't know. I've never had to feed that many people before in my life. That's 25,000 people. But then Jesus tells all the people to sit down. He sits down, and then he takes the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. And he did the same with the fish. So, Andrew, even though he's trying to be proactive and do something, he's still looking for a material answer, right? He still is well, I don't know. It's really kind of silly because it's how are we going to feed all these people? I don't know. Let's go see if anyone has any food. Well, if anyone has any food, that's one less person that you have to worry about feeding. What good is it going to do for you to get this one person's food? And he was thinking, how are we going to split this up between everybody? And maybe if you had got 10,000 meals, you could give everybody half of a meal or something if there's 20,000 people there. But nobody can be really entirely sure what Andrew was thinking in this instance. But one thing we know is he's trying to come up with a natural solution for this natural problem. And it's interesting here, again, we're talking about the means of this miracle. Why did Jesus multiply the food from this boy? Why not just put a plate of food in front of everybody miraculously? Wouldn't that be really cool? That would be a great miracle. This is a great miracle too, what's happening, but why not just and then everybody, oh, look, fish, where'd this come from? Manna from heaven, yay! And then they all eat and they're all happy. Why not do it that way? Why does he use this boy's food when he could have easily made some out of thin air? And I think that the answer is, it's another demonstration of God partnering with the people. He's asking, what do you have to bring to the table? What do you have to offer? It's I do a podcast, and it's really fun. It's just if you don't know, it's just like a internet radio show, right? So everybody can be on the radio now because of the internet. So you just record like a radio kind of talk show, and you put it out there on the air. And we've been doing it. We're coming up on a year, working with this other guy. He's real fun and funny, and he's been doing it for a long time. And it's theology. We talk about theology stuff, and we've been having lots of people listening to it. It's really fun. And then we get lots of people. To come on and to talk with us. And we do these interviews with really cool theologians. And I just recently I try to it's a big deal. I try to brag about it, but nobody knows who John Lennox is. But I just got to talk to John Lennox. He's a world-famous mathematician and apologist, and I got to talk with him on there. It was super cool, and we, have the opportunity to talk to all these people. And then after we've been doing it for so long, there's this little community of people, and I have been invited to go on to other shows, and people say, "Hey, would you want to come on our show and talk about some of the stuff, that you're doing, and some of the stuff that you know?" And I'm like, oh man, it's really humbling and really cool. It's cool. That's cool when somebody calls and says, "Hey, we got a show. We think it would be really cool if you came on to our show and you talked about some interesting stuff for some people. That'd be really cool. Do you want to do that?" And I'm like, yeah, that is, and it feels nice. in as humble a way as I can make it feel nice. I say all of that to say, the Lord is doing that with each and every one of us. He's saying, what do you have to offer? You have something cool to offer. You have something cool to bring to the table. You have something cool to bring to the podcast. Do you want to come bring your stuff to the podcast? And you might be thinking like, well, I only just have this little lunch bag of food and it's barely even enough for me. Like, yes, bring that. It's going to be awesome. Come be on my show. It's going to be so cool. You're going to be a star. And it's crazy because God desires partnership with us. He wants us to be a part of what he's doing. And I think that so often we get in that place where we think, I don't have anything significant to offer. I don't have anything good to bring to the table. What can I possibly do? What could the Lord possibly use me for? What need could possibly be met with the resources that I have? And the story here from this little boy is that you should never buy into the lie that what you have to offer is not enough. God takes the little bit that any one of us have, and no matter how much a person has by worldly standards, it is a little bit in the economy of God. And he takes that little bit and he turns it into something incredible. And this is one of the really, really wonderful things about being a part of a church, is that all of the things that you bring to the table in your time, your talents, and your treasures. So the time that you can offer around here, the things that you can do, your skill sets, and then the financial resources or otherwise that you have, no matter how great or small, we bring them all to the Lord, we present them to him, and then we see him make much of our little. And he wants to do that. He wants to partner with you. He wants to give you the opportunity to be a hero, to do something great. And if you keep your 5 loaves and your 2 fish to yourself, it's not going to amount to very much at all. It's not going to do very much at all. But when you give it to the Lord, you can do a whole lot of things. This is very interestingly the very first miracle where John tells us that Jesus actually uses his hands for something. All of the other miracles previous to this, he's been talking. He's just given command for people to do things. He just says it. But this is the first one where he actually sits down with his hands and he touches and breaks the bread himself. He's getting his hands dirty, if you will, here, right alongside of his disciples. He's working right alongside of them in order to achieve the goal that they are after. They're working together as a cohesive team, but do not miss the fact that Jesus is clearly at the head of the distribution line here. That without question, while we are partnering with him, he is clearly the one that is sitting there dispensing the food to everybody. And when you think about this, I don't know how it happened. I don't know if he's just keeps on reaching into a sack that the boy had and pulling stuff out. And I mean, even there, the food's got to be just popping up. Every time he puts his hand in, there's another one. Or if it would have to be concealed. Otherwise it's just appearing in his hand. I don't know how it happened. But every piece of bread went through his hand. Every single piece of bread that was distributed, every fish that was distributed went through the hand of Jesus. He touched it all, gave it to his disciples, and they went and distributed it to the people. And this is a perfect illustration of what he's going to say later in John 15:5. I am the vine, and you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. But apart from me, you can do nothing. And this story perfectly represents that. Apart from Jesus, what are we going to do? I don't know. There's a bunch of people. We don't have any food. Here's a little bit of food. Maybe the 12 of us should just take this and go break it up for ourselves and have a bite. Who knows what we're going to do? We can't do anything. This is what Jesus is saying. You can't do anything apart from me. Nothing can you do apart from me. And don't miss this point either, that what is it in that those verses that we just read that actually seems to have actuated this miracle in verse 11? It says that it was after Jesus gave thanks. Can you even imagine being in that situation and saying, we got conservatively 10,000 people to feed. We got 10,000 people to feed. And somebody comes up and they say, here's 5 loaves and 2 fish. Can you imagine having the kind of faith in that situation to say, thank you, God. Thank you for these 5 loaves and 2 fish. I would probably be honestly like, oh, great. All right. Maybe we can get Rick Moranis' shrinking machine and shrink everybody, and this will be enough to feed everybody. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids joke, if you guys weren't around for that one. They find the big oatmeal cream pie out there in the yard. He thanks him, though, for it. And that needs to be our attitude. We need to be grateful for whatever it is that we have. I'm going to give you a little... I might have shared this with you guys before, but it was strange us landing here, Angela and I. And, I had finished school, right? And I went and got a big fancy degree. And I thought, boy, this degree is going to open so many opportunities for me. This is going to be great. I can get any job I want to with an old PhD. Look at me. And then... was having a hard time finding jobs. It's tough out there right now. The Christian academia, seminaries and things are flooded right now because there was a huge, insurgence of people back about 10 years ago. And all these people were graduating and they were like, we're not building any more seminaries, guys. So I don't know where you guys are all going to work when you get done, but good luck out there. So you can't find a job anywhere. And then even in church work, churches are closing down in the United States of America right now faster than they're opening up, if you did not know that. And it's a real life statistic. So there aren't really jobs anywhere. And, we somehow, through some strange series of miraculous events, ended up here. And I came, and some of you might remember, and I said, it seems this is the Lord's will. And we prayed about it, and we kind of looked around or whatever, and then came and we decided, and I preached, and it wasn't long after that that I was thinking to myself, what on earth did I get myself into? Not that those of you who were here when I started, the few that are holding out, thank you guys. Not that you're not wonderful, but I started kind of looking around and I was thinking, this place needs some work. Yeah. This is going to be hard. And then Joyce handed me the budget and I was like, oh, okay. And, I started to really feel like, feels like it's 5 loaves and 2 fish for 10,000 people here. And of course, that's exactly what it was and what it is, which is really cool. Because if you remember, this is very similar to that miracle of Jesus turning the water into the wine. And that was the first sermon that I shared with you guys. And the point of that story was Jesus was saying, the best is yet to come. When you think that the well has dried up, when you think that you're out of wine, when you think that the party is over, you haven't seen anything yet. And that was what he reminded me of as I was walking around. And then I started to realize, oh my gosh, we have 10 acres of land here. We have almost no debt. We're on a very busy road. I have an incredible group of people that have already started to gather around me. We have everything that we need. And then it quickly went from 5 loaves and 2 fish to, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for your provision. Thank you for what we're about to see you do. And that is what I continue to believe. And that is what I believe continues to happen. It takes a long time, to hand out 10,000 pieces of bread and fish. But I think that we're well on our way there. And we need to just remember that we need to have hearts of gratitude in the midst of all of this. And this is how the story ends here. When they all had enough to eat, he said to the disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. And I thought that this was really a funny thing at the end, that Jesus, after he apparently just said, "I can create limitless amounts of bread. I am a bread factory that never runs out of bread. And here's all the bread, and give it out to all these people." And then at the end of that, he gives the instruction, let nothing be wasted. He said, go pick up the leftovers. And it's like, why? Can't you just make more? Why go pick up the leftovers? That's like more work. We just handed out 10,000 baskets of food. Why do we have to go back around and pick up the leftovers now? And it's just a really, really interesting command that Jesus gives here. It didn't cost anyone anything for that food to be made. Nothing, in a sense, was really being wasted. But I think that what's going on here is that Jesus was demonstrating to us what stewardship really looks like. And in God's economy, nothing ever goes to waste.
Amen.
In God's economy, nothing goes to waste. I wish I could say that about our United States economy right now. But rest assured that anything that is offered to God, anything that is given to God, is not going to go to waste. No good deed goes unnoticed. No act of obedience is brushed aside, and no tear is lost. Are you guys familiar with Psalm 56:8? That you have kept count of my sorrows and put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? That the Bible tells us that not one single tear that you have shed has been wasted. That not a single drop of sweat or blood that you have offered or you have given has been wasted. That the years that you have put in and you have served, the years that perhaps the locusts have eaten, that in God's economy, none of that goes to waste. Nothing that you are doing for the Lord is being done in vain. And nothing that he is doing in our midst is done in vain. And even if we don't see it, and even if we don't experience it right now, we know that in eternity, we're going to see all of this. You might think sometimes that your time, your talent, and your treasures are wasted. But if it was offered to the Lord, I can assure you that they have not been wasted. And what's really, really interesting here, too, is that when you look at the leftovers, there were remarkably, just so happened to be, 12 full entire baskets. Easy to do the math on that one. So that everyone, those 12 men who were out there laboring in the heat of the day, handing out this food to these people, they got paid. You get paid when you work for the Lord.
Amen.
It might not always be in the way that you would like to be paid. I would like to be paid in various other ways sometimes. But that's not what we're working for. But the point is that doing the Lord's work is not a thankless job. You might not get a lot of thanks from people around here. I try to do the very best that I can to see everything that everybody is doing and to be very grateful and to thank everybody for all that everybody does around here. But there's a lot of you doing a lot of things. And if I miss it, I'm very sorry. But just know this, that your Father in heaven is looking down and he's seeing everything and none of it's going to waste. And he's thanking you. And you are being repaid in this life and in the next. That's a promise from Jesus. And then it finishes like this. I think I said that once already, but I really mean it this time. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, so all the people saw it. There's no food anywhere. Nobody's got any food. Nobody's got any food. The disciples went around and asked everybody, do you have food? No. Oh, so nobody. Okay, so everybody knew nobody has any food. And then all of a sudden there's food for everybody. The people saw this and they began to say, surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world. Almost certainly they're referencing here again Moses. In Deuteronomy 18:15, the Lord your God, Moses says, will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from your fellow Israelites. You must listen to him. Almost certainly they're thinking, this is the guy that Moses said God was going to raise up. This is him. So, Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. So the people see a great sign and they say, this is the guy. And then what the scriptures tell us is that Jesus knows that they want to make him the guy, and then he withdraws. Now, we're going to find out exactly why in the coming verses, because, spoiler alert, they don't truly believe that Jesus is the Son of God. And this is the thing that happens over and over and over again. They see the miracles. They say, cool trick. Can you use that trick for our purposes? Can you do with those magical powers the things that we would like to have done? And Jesus continues to say to the people over and over and over again, as he did throughout this entire account, I have a plan. Why don't you come help me with my plan? Why don't you be a part of my plan? Go back to where we started in the garden. God says to Adam and Eve, here's a perfect paradise for you to live in. I have a really great plan for all of humanity, for you, for all of time. My plan just involves you guys loving me and being obedient to me and never touching that tree over there. That's the plan. Can we do that plan? Do you guys want to do that plan? It's going to be awesome. And Adam and Eve said, no, we want to do our own plan. And they threw everything into chaos. And then they lost their fellowship with God. And in this same story, God is trying as best as he can in Jesus to get people to partner with him. He's trying to get people to partner with him in what he's doing. And then at the end, the people try and co-opt Jesus for their own purposes. And Jesus does, in this instance, just the same thing that his Father did in the garden, and he withdraws from their presence. Because Jesus wants to partner with us on his terms, not on ours. And this is one of the things that I learned some time ago. I don't know where you guys are at in this, but I spent a lot of time in my life inviting Jesus to be part of my plans. Okay, Lord, here's what we're going to do. Here's the career path I'm going to take. Here's the things I want to achieve, the salary I want to earn, the whatever. Here's all of my plans, Lord. Come along with me. And some of you are much wiser and more advanced in your years than I am, and you have probably come to realize that just really never works. Amen. That when we start trying to force, as it says here in the text, Jesus to fit into whatever idea, strategy, campaign, work that we have to do, his natural inclination is to withdraw from us. To say, I am not going to be a part of that, because really, in the end, what that is it's disobedience. You are not following after the will of the Father. That is our work. That is our bread, to do the will of the Father. And then, of course, when he withdraws, we're apart from him. And then, of course, apart from him, we can do nothing. And then we find ourselves floundering around out there. And the Lord is like, here's the, like, I had a plan already. Come back. Let's do my plan. Let's do my plan. Your plan's really bad. Your plan hasn't worked for a long time. My plan is really good. And I just think it's so, so very cool that God is asking us. He's desiring that we come into partnership with him. And this is I guess, what I have taken from this as I was thinking about it and studying and writing these long notes and rambling a lot. God has something for every single one of us to be doing. There is a multitude of people out there who need the living water and the bread of life that we are offering. And no job is unimportant. No skill set, no offering, no talent, no anything is unimportant. And if, perhaps you're struggling and thinking, what could I possibly do? You can come to me and talk to me about it, and I might have some great ideas. Or I might just say, let's copy off a Jesus test on this one, because I don't know what to do with your basket weaving skill either. I'm sure we can use it somewhere at the church. I'm sure that we can. I didn't mean to disparage anybody who basket weaves. Does anybody basket weave? It's just a trope. Do you know what I mean? But I would encourage everybody to, really, we're going to, because Misael had to leave early, and because my wife is out of town, and because Amanda is out of town, and because Stephanie's out of town, and because so many people are out of town, and I really only just found out Misael was going to be leaving in the middle of service today, we're going to end service a little bit differently. And instead of having any live music, we're going to just play a song that has really impacted me lately, and I hope that it impacts you too. And it goes along with what we have been talking about today, with kind of the trials and the tears and the work that we are doing in our lives and in this church. And I just want to ask you guys to reflect on: do you feel like you're in the middle of some kind of a test? Are you feeling tempted in any way? Are you feeling like maybe pulled in a direction that might not be the one that would be glorifying to God? Are you perhaps in a spot and you maybe are copying off of Jesus' paper, which I would advise, but it's a really long answer? You're like, that's 5 paragraphs long. How am I supposed to copy all of that? One word at a time. That's how you copy it. I can copied a lot of papers. That's not true. I haven't. Maybe 1 or 2. In high school. Not. All right. 1 word at a time. I don't know where you are. I oftentimes I find it kind of foolish sometimes to make application from sermons, because I don't know what's going on in each one of your lives. You know who does? The Lord. I'm not going to try to tell you what to do with what we've heard today. I'm going to trust that the Holy Spirit is going to show up and that he's going to make this make sense in your life, because I can't make it make sense. I can barely make it make sense in my own life, and certainly I can't do it for each one of you in here. So we're just going to leave it at that. We're going to play this song. I really love it. I hope that you also enjoy it. I would just encourage you to spend some time there in reflection. There's going to be the words up on the screen because I think they're really powerful and I love them. You can read those. You can pray. You can do whatever you want to. We do have the elements down here for the communion that you can come and partake of whenever you are ready. Talked for a really long time today, guys. I'm sorry about that. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your love, God, for your grace and for your provision. We thank you, God, that you take the little that we have to give, God, and you make much of it. And we thank you, God, that each one of us, God, no matter how important or unimportant we might feel, God, it is you who desires for us to be a part of the great work that you are doing, God. And may we never lose sight of that. May we never let our thoughts and our heart and our mind get fixed on the things that we are about, God, but may we continue to keep your mission at the center of our hearts. So we love you, God. I just ask that in this time you would just speak a word of encouragement, God, of hope, if correction and conviction, if we should need it, God, but that you would just have your way in our midst right now. We love you, and we ask it in your name.